All right, let's move on to the next topic. And the next topic of today is kind of continuing that topic of the kind of extension that we're looking at. That is of course Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton and the story of him wanting more money. But here is the story that goes on for here. There are multiple people inside the organization that if they had their choice between Caris LeVert and Colin Sexton, they would take Carius over Colin because of the size, because of the length, and because of the versatility that he can bring on the defensive end of the floor. And this is what Chris Fedor said on the Zach Lowe podcast. And they like what they saw with Carius and Darius together. Obviously, the numbers back that up. And that was, of course, via Spotify. And so the question that now becomes is that Colin Sexton is looking at wanting a contract worth $20 million. And the question now becomes, Pete, is Colin Sexton worth the $20 million extension that he is so for desiring in his NBA career? Do you think it's worth it?
No. Not at all. I mean, I like Colin Sexton. No. You cannot be, and his stats, and this is the problem, right? His stats would say otherwise. On paper, if you were to look as quickly and just precisely at the important stats, quote unquote, of the NBA, you would say 100%. This guy is still super young. He's averaged over 20 points in of the seasons he's played in the NBA. If you look deeper and dive deeper into those stats and how he gets those stats and what type of a team success those stats equate to, the answer is a big fat no. It's a big fat no. They had their best season of Colin Sexton's career when he was out the whole year. Think about that. How can you get that much of a pay raise if your team just had its most successful year of your whole career and you played not 1 minute of it, right? Because the cruel irony of this whole situation is, even let's say they get Sexton on a $16 million, like let's say they get him on a friendly contract, I would probably still rather play Rubio with Garland on this squad.
Yeah.
Me personally. Saying I would not appreciate having a guy like Colin Sexton off the bench or whatever it is, definitely not. I mean, he's a solid dude. It's more, he definitely does not deserve $20+ million this season at this point in his career. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough conversation to have, and it continues from our hard cap, no cap salary video that will be out later during the week. I think for me, when it comes to a guy like Colin Sexton, I think that he's shown, and again, we could talk about the stats. He has improved, and has kind of been consistent with some of his numbers. Again, shooting, I believe, 37% the year before he got hurt. I think that's a great thing to see. But at the same time, it kind of goes back to the point that you talked about. It's the conversation of, is Colin Sexton good enough to be your number 2 or number 3 option on the team? And the numbers and kind of the way that they play would say no. And I think that, Caris LeVert is getting a little bit more attention. I think a lot of people are liking him as kind of like, they would rather maybe trade Colin Sexton to try to get some assets for him rather than keep him on the contract that he's on right now. And so that's the question mark for me when it comes to a guy like Colin Sexton, is how do you make yourself unexpendable on a Cavaliers team? Because it's hard, right? Because I think JB Bickerstaff likes a certain style, and unfortunately, Colin Sexton does not fit that style, which is a long, lengthy, athletic defender, which goes along with the other guys on the team, like Larry Marketing, like Evan Mobley, like Darius Garland. Like Darius Garland is the smallest that he'll go because of how crafty and how much Darius Garland does play like Steve Nash in some sense. That's
very efficient, unlike Colin Sexton.
And that's the problem that a guy like Colin Sexton is going to have is, the Cavaliers, who are up on the up and up, and we have a video out right now talking about, are they Eastern Conference title contenders? That's a question that a lot of people were asking, especially after what happened last season, where they were on a huge rise. They were top 4, and then as soon as the Garland injury happened, they fell back down to earth. But you could also say that maybe if they had Sexton too, they would be okay. But again, it goes back to your point. You're saying they had the best season without him, and so I think that this is going to be a very interesting situation to kind of monitor and continue to look at, because again, I love Colin Sexton. I think he's a good player, but does he bring the emphasis that the Cavaliers need, right? Because the questions that I had, is Dan Gilbert, stats showing improvement in all areas. And the question is, does Dan Gilbert think of his team? Like, does he think that Colin Sexton is going to be worth that much? Dan or Dan Gilbert's not really that much of a guy that's willing to give out his money away to anybody. He wants to make sure that you are the real deal. And, does having him on the team make the team title contenders? Like, does he enhance that team? Or does he kind of keep them about the same where they're at right now?
Well, and realistically, we have to talk. Let's just talk about the Cavs in general. I know you just mentioned it. We have that video that just got uploaded to the Charge. Guys, go check it out. Like, subscribe. Thank you. But let's talk about the Cavs in general, just a little bit more specific right now. Right? Pay Colin Sexton right now $20+ million. That puts you in a situation where you definitely are going to lose somebody in a couple seasons. Right? I would argue with what you're building in Cleveland in terms of the size, athleticism, and some of these players. And Bernie, I've been sending you clips all week of some of these clips of Evan Mobley at these camps, working out. And what did I tell you before Mobley even got drafted? The reason I was so high on Evan Mobley was because this is a 7-foot player who can dribble up the court, initiate offense for himself, and he is incredibly underrated as a passer, right? I would argue that paying your guards a ton of money when you have somebody of the potential of Evan Mobley on your squad actually eliminates some of what makes Evan Mobley as amazing as he has the potential to be, right? And you already have Garland. You already have Rubio. I think you have good guards. Maybe I should clear up for Colin Sexton. I think Colin Sexton is probably worth $20 million to a couple teams in the league. And it's a little different than what we were talking about with Draymond, where I said I don't think any team should pay him the max other than the Warriors, probably. Colin Sexton is definitely worth $20 million to a team like Dallas, right? He would be a perfect fit on Dallas. I know that rumor has been out there. Perfect for that fit. But here's the biggest argument for Colin Sexton. A shot chucker, right? He is going to get his shots one way or the other. That has been true his entire career, all the way back to him at Alabama, I believe. He is going to get his shots. Is Colin Sexton getting his shots more important than Garland getting his shots? I would say no. Is him getting his shots more important than Evan Mobley getting his shots? Definitely not. Even Jarrett Allen. Is his shot more valuable than Jarrett Allen? I would say 100% no. Jarrett Allen is incredibly efficient at what he does. He's more valuable in terms of winning. We saw that last season. I just think he is not the type of player this team needs long term. Like, you have all the pieces to build something really special in Cleveland. If anything, this is your guy to go. They can make a sign and trade with him, right?
Yeah, you could do a sign and trade with him and kind of just
100%. That's what I'm doing. I'm getting this guy off the team just because he's valuable, but he's not what you need.
Yeah.
And if I have a guy that's 7 foot and can dribble and pass the way Evan Mobley does, I put him in every scenario possible to develop those skills while he's a young man and let him be the best possible version of himself in 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, this is the question mark that, for Cavs fans, I hope that you're watching this video a little bit later down the line, or, obviously we're recording it so we can put it out later. What do you make of your team? Again, we talked about just a couple years ago where, we were wondering, like, what is their future? What is their, without LeBron James, are they going to be the Cavaliers of old where they're sucking and they're not very good? But, since Dave Griffin has come into the organization, you could see that they're building something here. This isn't just the same old Cavs that are getting, Anthony Bennett and these other bad, first round pick players and really doing a good job of their homework of who they want on their team. And, Colin Sexton was part of that regime of the come up. But you can clearly see that this team has another level to go. And the question mark becomes, do you take Colin Sexton with you to that buildup? I still think that at the end of the day, the Cavs are missing that sort of wing player that can kind of take over from the small forward position. And I know that they play a different style. Obviously, you have guys like Kevin Love and his big contract that you're still paying. Like, that's another guy that you can get off the books. You got
Definitely, yeah.
Larry Marketing, again, a good, played really well last season. Jarrett Allen. You got Isaac Okoro as well. Does Isaac Okoro fit the scheme of things? That's the biggest question
He's
mark.
he's kind of that wing guy. It just hasn't always worked out so far.
Yeah, and so to me, as the Cavaliers continue to monitor kind of what they want to do, and I know this is going off from the Colin Sexton extension, but it kind of goes back to it now. What do the Cavaliers do? Do they do a sign and trade? What players are out there for the Cavaliers to go get? Because again, this is going to come back to that situation. Do players want to play in Cleveland? I think that I'm hoping that we can live in a different time era where if a player sees a great opportunity to see a young, talented team like the Cavaliers, again, timeline. You talk about it all the time, Pete. Timeline.
Yeah,
A player
100%. Yeah.
a player has to see that there is a timeline here in the Cavaliers and has to look to try to get on this team because I like what I'm seeing from the Cavaliers, and if they can just add that wing player, whether it's a sign and trade with Colin Sexton or Isaac Okoro, whoever else they could want to trade along with them. If you can get that player, I think the team is going to be really special, man. I am excited for the Cavaliers, and again, they're not even my team, but I'm excited for what they have for the
I'm
future
gonna be watching a lot of Cleveland.
because they have some really good players that I like. So I'm curious to see what the situation will entail for the Cavaliers moving forward. Because again, it comes down to me to, you have Evan Mobley, you have Darius Garland as the 1-2 punch, you have Larry Markin as kind of like the fourth option. There is something there. Now the question is, can they get over that hump? And that's something that I want to ask you guys in the comment section down below of this video and really of the stream as well. What can the ceiling be for this Cavaliers team in the next 2 to 3 years? Can it read the NBA Finals without LeBron James? That's the biggest question mark for me, at least personally.
I mean, I think as long as you have a guy like Mobley, you're on your way. Your way.
Yeah, you're definitely on your way. And again, let us know in the comment section down below when it comes to a guy like not Darius Garland. We all know he's worth the money. But more so Colin Sexton. Do you guys think that Colin Sexton is worth that money? Because again, how do you, and the other question I want to ask you guys as well, how do you view Sexton? Do you view him as a 1, a 2, a 3? How do you view Sexton in the grand scheme of things, whether he's on the Cavaliers or not? I'd love to know your comments and opinions in the comment section down below. And Sean said, nah, they need a superstar free agent signing. I think that they do at the wing position, but they are damn close to getting to that spot that they need to for being a contending team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, they're really close. I agree with you. I really think if they got like a really solid wing player, like I would argue somebody like Mikal Bridges from Phoenix is probably a pretty good fit. Just defense threes. And this team is nasty. And it really depends on your take on Mobley, just because the question would be, do they need another superstar? I would argue they have 2 superstars. I think Garland and Mobley are well on their way to being like actual stars in the NBA. So
yeah. And again,
I'm down for it.
Let us know in the comment section down below, who do you guys think that wing player is? And please remember, like Pete said earlier, remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, all that stuff helps out the algorithm, and we're curious to see if we can get to that magic 2K number. And again, we do appreciate you guys for the magic 1,000, and we'll continue to give you content each and every time. Sexton, to me, has that same value as Brogdon. Okay, Malcolm Brogdon.
I honestly would prefer to have Brogdon. Personally,
Yeah.
On the contract that Brogdon's on, I would rather have that than Sexton on a 20 mil.
And I think with Brogdon as well, you can kind of also figure with him, he's not going to be a shot
That might
chucker.
be harsh. Dang, man, I keep doing that to myself today. Now I'm questioning that. I mean, Sexton's like 22, right? Or 21?
I think he's 20. Hang on. Let me confirm on the.
It's tough, man. Like, Colin Sexton is one of the very few players in the league that I would actually argue his value
23
swings. His value swings wildly dependent upon the team he's on.
Yeah.
That's why, like, Dallas, he's like a uber version of having Spencer Dinwiddie come off your bench for Dallas, right? If anything, he'd be perfect to go next to Luka just because of the attention he's going to draw, just because he's going to go try and get buckets regardless of if Luka's on the court with him, right?
Yeah.
They could definitely use that. That's a lot of value for that team. More teams where you already have a lot of ball dominant players. He's not. I mean, this is going to be be harsh, some people's metric, but kind of like a shorter, dependent version of young Westbrook, right? Like he is going to be reckless and get basket, and he's going to get his shots and get stats for sure. It's just about you have the right players around him to maximize the winning part of it.
Yeah, exactly. And again,
And to be clear, we did. Oh, sorry, I was just
no,
going to say something about Karis LeVert too. We
yeah.
didn't
Go ahead, go
actually
ahead.
really talk too much about Karis
Let's
LeVert.
talk about him. We have time.
It's really not that different. I wouldn't pay Karis LeVert $20 million either. I mean, Karis LeVert, actually, I would argue I'd rather pay Colin Sexton than Karis LeVert. I just wouldn't pay either of them that much. My perspective. Like Karis LeVert, I wasn't a Knicks fan and didn't watch as much Julius Randle and RJ Barrett as I do. There is not many players in the league besides Karis LeVert that dribble into double teams and just waste possessions more than Karis LeVert does. There's not many. Like he loves that. He really does. I don't know if he loves it, but he loves putting himself in that situation. So I'm not really big on either of them personally. I thought giving up a first for him was, at the time, I was like, wow, a little wild where you're at. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to, he obviously had those great years in Brooklyn when they had that young team with D'Lo, him, Jared Allen. Again, those were kind of the teams that, we thought, okay, maybe the Brooklyn Nets, they got something there. And then, his career hasn't really taken off to that extent since. We obviously know in this year he averaged 17 a game. But again, my concern about Karis LeVert for me is the 3-point shooting. It's not where it needs to be at least a threat from the 3-point land. And so I think that he really needs to work on that in the future. And again, it just comes down to a lot of different things, but it depends on what your cup of tea is. Are you a Karis LeVert guy? Are you a Sexton guy? I think Sexton gives you a lot more, but what I think Karis LeVert does is a really good off the bench player that can do a lot of damage and kind of in that, maybe not as good as Jamal Crawford, but in that 6-man role, 7th-man role, kind of coming off the bench and giving you those points that you need so the offense doesn't let up. And you can kind of go blow for blow with the other team. And then once the starters come back in, you can kind of do your damage, especially when it comes to the Cavaliers, who are very defensive oriented with JB Bickerstaff and the style that they decide to play with the length that they have. I think it's going to be a very interesting and exciting time for Cavs fans to figure out, what their next move is.
Yeah, and I mean, one last question for Colin Sexton is he's come back from, I believe, a torn MCL, right?
Mm-hmm.
He going to be? That's a big injury, and his game is really predicated on his explosiveness. Like a really good athlete, very fast. That's just another big reason. Wouldn't get a giant extension right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a good time. I don't ever want to give like the athletic short guard money coming off a knee injury. And is that fair to them? Maybe not necessarily, but it is business. Like we're saying, you have to ration the money. Like we're in a soft cap. Back to our minute discussion. We're in the cap situation, so you need to play accordingly. Build your team. So I'd run this on a wait and see type of basis, like a prove it type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, Colin Sexton has to really come out this next year and play his best basketball. And that doesn't mean you're a shot chucker. That doesn't mean you're taking away possessions and really giving stuff up, especially with the way that the team played last season. Again, they, to me, have the expectations and kind of they set the mark at, okay, we're a top 4 team when fully healthy. And to me, Colin Sexton has to maintain that when he comes back into the lineup, and other players as well. Ricky Rubio coming back from an ACL injury as well. They have to show me that they are willing to be a top 4 team this season for me to be like, okay, Sexton, we'll give you the money. Or, okay, LeVert, we'll give you the money. Because to me, if they can't even do that, that just tells me you guys were not the people that we needed to sign. We need to sign other people. We need to sign guys that fit that mold of, okay, we're not going to let up what we have already right now. And so to me, I'm hoping to see that from the Cavaliers next season. But the question mark now becomes for the Cavaliers, as they, like you said, it comes into it. It's a prove it year for a lot of guys on this team. Because, again, they set the expectations so high before the injuries of top 4. I'm concerned in a sense, and, also confident in the Cavaliers of being that team. The question is, do they have the mental fortitude to do it this coming season? Because again, a lot of things could change, right? A lot of teams can now scout the Cavaliers and be like, okay, this is how we beat them. This is how we beat their zone defense. This is how we beat their length, their matchup zone, whatever it is that they're doing. I think that they need to show that they can do it once again. And I know that it's a cliche to say, oh, well, try to prove it again another year. But especially for guys that were hurt like Sexton was, you have to prove it. You got to.
Way his team played, he was out. Like, that is the ultimate prove it. You got to prove it big time if your team is that much better without you. So, last question for Sexton: does he still have the youngling Padawan braid?
I think he still does.
I'm not signing anybody with that. If you're 4 years into the league and you're still Padawan, bro, no.
Let my guy be a Padawan. Let him be a Padawan.
Dude, Padawans don't get $20 million a year.
Only Jedi Masters.
Only the Masters get close to max deals. You don't have anybody who is still in training that level of deal.
And let us know in the comment section down below if you agree with Peter's statement, and I'll make sure to make that a YouTube short and a TikTok as well.